everyone, I'm David Wilcox from LYRASIS. I'm joined by Paige Morfitt from Whitman College. This is just a demo on mapping metadata, cleaning and controlling fields to improve migrations. So this work is related to a grant project that began September of 2020, the Fedora Migration Paths and Tools project. This was funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And it is focused primarily on migrations from version 3 of Fedora to version 6. And the most relevant part of the grant work for this demo is the pilot migrations that are going on in phase 1. So again, this work began last September. We're just wrapping it up in September of 2021. And the goal here is really to document the migration and upgrade process with a couple of pilot partner institutions, one of which is Whitman College, and to really detail some of the metadata mapping and decision-making that goes on throughout this process. And the end goal here is to produce a toolkit that we can share with the community for feedback and to update over time. And so with that, I think I'll turn things over to Paige, who's going to talk about the metadata mapping and remediation process that the folks at Whitman College followed.
So in 2020, we at Whitman formed the Metadata Working Group to clean and assess our metadata in preparation for our migration to Islandora 8. We held weekly meetings discussing remediation and sought to clean our metadata up to help the migration and to help the process move as smooth as possible. The first thing we did was get a list of all the fields we used in Islandora 7 and add them to a Trello board. Once each field had its own Trello card, then we attached 3 documents to each card. The first attachment is a spreadsheet that depicted how our fields were currently being used across all of our collections. This was prep work done before our meetings, so we didn't spend meeting time looking this information up. The second attachment is the Google document. This reflected meeting discussions and decisions about fields and hosted a single place where we could go back to for reference later on. Once we created standards for our fields, we then moved to edit them in the 7 collections or 80 sub-collection spreadsheets. We used spreadsheets to keep track of the status of our changes and to ensure whether or not the work was actually done. For fields that we wanted to utilize the linked data in, we needed additional remediation. In Islandora 8, a single field can pull from multiple Islandora 8 vocabularies. To do this, you need to attach prefixes before each term to indicate upon ingest where those terms will go. For example, our linked agent field uses the person and corporate bodies vocabularies. Other fields like geographic location only pull from one Islandora 8 vocabulary and thus don't need prefixes. To ensure these fields remain clean, we created a spreadsheet that acted like an internal controlled vocabulary, specifically because Islandora 8 does not hold us accountable to follow authorized controlled vocabularies like the Library of Congress. Taking terms from fields in our collection spreadsheets, we respectively created 4 tabs, such as linked agent, subject, genre, and geographic terms. Using Google Sheets data validation, we pulled all values from a tab into a spreadsheet column and created a drop-down list. Because our fields can contain multiple values in them, we used an equation in the data validation that allowed us to combine terms, removing the possibility of white spaces. Once these terms were combined, then they could be copied from this spreadsheet and pasted into the actual collection spreadsheet for ingest. For the third and final Trello attachment, we had a Google document that focused on mapping from mods to RDF. Once we had created standards for our fields and took the time to discuss the formatting, we could then focus on the mapping from mods to RDF. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so we looked to see who else had done a similar mapping and utilized their work, such as this done by the Islandora Metadata Interest Group. Once here, we could determine if their suggested mapping fits our RDF mappings, and when we combined a list, which we would then add to our third attachment. So the third attachment is where we compared possible mods to RDF mappings and listed our final decisions along with information about the RDF fields. With so much information, I ended up creating a spreadsheet and equations to pull from each of those documents to create a one-stop shop location for quick reference. The utilization of equations made it easy to manage so much information, and it was a good place to triple check your work, specifically when it comes to mapping your metadata. Through using spreadsheets, Google Documents, and Trello, we were able to remediate our metadata for the grant and start Islandora 8 with a clean slate. Through this process, we learned that it was important to have clear communication amongst ourselves, as well as take lots of small breaks, so that way that you ensure that you are keeping up with the standards of your metadata as much as possible. And thank you.
Thanks, Paige. And if anyone would like any information on the grant work or any things that were discussed during the demo, our email addresses are here, so feel free to get in touch.